Is it about 4:30? We're gonna go to Vegas right now.
Yes, sir. Drippity drip drip. Do not drown.
Vegas, man. We going to Vegas. Got an interview set up for us, boys. All right. So I hope you guys are gonna enjoy this as much as I'm gonna enjoy it. The person that we're about to interview or get on the podcast, somebody that really inspired me at a young age. I had a clothing brand when I was a sophomore in high school, and I started it because of who we're about to meet right now. So. Picked up the Prius, picked up the Lamborghini. Come on, this is a Ferrari, baby. This is a whatever you want it to be. But as long as I got an aux cord, that's all that matters. The nicest people I've ever met in my life are actually the most successful. Okay, they're kinder, they're more giving, they're more accepting, they're not judgmental, like all that good stuff, man. So, No Secure Bag Podcast, #1 podcast for the youngest entrepreneurs. Preferably e-compreneurs. That's what we focus on. We're not any know-it-alls. I'm not a know-it-all. As a matter of fact, I'm in Vegas to go learn more about e-commerce because I just feel like I don't know as much as I should. All right, that's why we even got this podcast going. So I can learn a lot more, Jimmy can learn, but at the same time we get to share it. All right, everybody, welcome on over to Secure the Bag Podcast. We got a very unique segment here. Somebody that I don't think you guys are too familiar with in terms of his, him as a person, but definitely his brand, Vintage Frames. All right. Now, Corey, thank you, of course, man, so much for hopping on here, man. I appreciate it. We literally been trying to make this happen for like about a week or two now, but you had Complex Con, right? How was that, by the way?
It was incredible.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was, living the internet in real life.
Yeah.
Being able to connect with our core audience in person is gigantic for us. And I guess for them too.
Got it. Now, Vintage Frames, when did that start exactly?
So Vintage Frames started, I think, just shy of 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. It was probably my 5th business. And it was the result of deciding that there were certain elements of each of the businesses that I had prior that I found dysfunctional. So for example, owning a sneaker store and always having your profits tied up in a size that nobody wanted. Or the same thing with clothing. When someone wanted a large, you only had a small. So the need for a business that had no sizes, or readily available sizes, I should say, was kind of the goal.
That's interesting.
That was the idea of Vintage Frames.
Got it. But my question to you is, were you always into
frames?
Into frames?
Yeah, where I'm from, frames were always a marker of status. Mm-hmm. So there was a certain community of people that I was privy to, not that I was part of, but an older crowd of people, like my grandparents' friends that would, these old guys that would meet at the breakfast place in the morning in their big Cadillacs, velour suits and big glasses and big rings, and that was the visual model for success. And as we would dive into personal relationships with each of these guys, there was really a story behind these frames, and it was almost a barrier between them and the rest of the world that allowed them to become this kind of character.
Got it.
And I always thought that was very interesting about the optical business in general.
Got it. So deeper than just the way they looked, more about the story behind each.
And how they made someone feel.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Amazing. And it's pretty funny that you mentioned, just kind of growing up and watching, people that, you admire maybe because of the results they have, or the materialistic things, or maybe the lifestyle just in general. The Twitter days, back in the Twitter days, I would say, honestly, when I was a sophomore in high school, I would see you and your good friend or business partner. I mean, you can clarify if I'm wrong, but you and 40 Ounce Fan would you know, you guys were at the forefront of creating this culture of like where it's cool to be, you know, business oriented and how do I put it? I guess, but still business oriented, but still from your true origins, right? Without going too out of like your you know, your upbringing or the culture that you were brought up in, right? So I would literally watch you and, you know, 40 Ounce Van just create, you know, turn these ideas into products, and you guys would sell out. And, you know, me being a teenager, I admire that, because I'm like, you know, especially as you start to get older, you see the difference between legal money, illegal money, right? The type of crowds. And, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I dabbled in both, just like the majority of people try to, you know, just experiment. But ultimately I was like, you know what, these guys, I mean, they're living the same lifestyle as all these other people in the culture that, you know, into fashion or all that, but yet they're have a solid business out of it. So why not pursue that? And so I started up a clothing brand, and a lot of people that tune in here know about that, because the end result of the clothing brand that I started, now all that was modeling after you guys, and I saw they were already selling out, so I'm like, hey, they're already selling out, right? Like, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I could just put Boston instead of New York. But the trouble that I ran into is literally what you just mentioned. It's the idea that creating like a specific design that I liked, most of the time it wouldn't really sell out, right? Or maybe one piece would sell out, the other would break even, and the rest would just stay on the shelf. And so when it comes to the e-commerce space, I definitely do agree with you on that. It's like, you want to figure something out that can fit, you know, the average person that's in that market of yours, right? So how did you go from somebody just admiring, you know, frames and interest in the story and just be, you know, a customer in a sense, to somebody who's like, hey, I'm just gonna take this and turn it into a full blown business?
I think ever since I was a kid, you know, my friends were playing outside or doing whatever the fuck they were really doing. My game was business. So, you know, whether it was, you know, a trend coming through our elementary school where kids were collecting Beanie Babies, well, that was cool to collect them, but what were you going to do with these stupid fucking dolls? You know, and how were you going to afford to buy them? You know, so it was, the challenge and the game for me internally was always, what's the business? You know, and, you know, you get to see the consumer end of it, you are a consumer end of it, and that's great, but there's only one guy that's satisfying that demand, and that's really the dude that's the coolest guy, not the guy that has all the Beanie Babies. You know what I mean? It's the guy that has none of them because he sold out. Right? And that kind of stood true throughout my whole life. So generally I was always in a collectible industry. I had to be, because my interests were in things that were generally collectible, like comics and baseball cards and Magic cards at one point and shit like that, and I couldn't afford them. So if I wanted them, I had to figure out a way to get them. So what was the way to satisfy the needs of the market and to be able to satisfy my own needs? That was kind of how this whole business thing came. So the business thing was really a plug and play. You know, and
like a means to get what you wanted, in a sense, when you were younger, or
I mean, when I was younger, and you know, up until definitely current ages, but the idea and the notion was that business should have always been the interest in the game, and the rest of the shit, the products were plug and play. So once you had your formula, that was the way to go, you know, and making it a little bit more advanced throughout the years, doing things I didn't like were more detrimental to my living than not having money.
Oh, that's really good. That's super powerful. Doing things that you don't like, that get you the things that you do like, right?
So you know, and I would rather be the happiest guy than the richest guy. Because generally the richest guys aren't the happiest guys, and you know, sometimes vice versa, but there had to be a happy medium between the two of them. The cool thing about glasses in general was there was no one who was making a historical lineage for the fashion aspect. So you could always pinpoint the medical progressions, but you could never find any lineage on the fashion. So I had taken my fashion degree in fashion history and
Wow.
merged it to.
You went to school for.
I went to school for fashion. I went to school for fashion marketing. I had a school that I was in at the time where my company that I made during school was so far surpassed the curriculum that I was being interviewed all the time, and when they would ask me about school, I would have rather negative things to say. So the school kicked me out with my, well, they didn't actually kick me out. They politely asked me to leave
Yeah.
with my diploma, and had to sign a non-disclosure that for 7 years after I couldn't speak about the school in any media or to anybody.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was like, cool, and then another school took interest, and the discussions were, marketing can't be taught, you either get it or you don't.
Yeah. Do you think
And-
that's true?
Yeah,
You think that's true?
I know it's true.
Yeah.
I think that people who are schooled in marketing can be part of an equation,
Mm-hmm.
but they cannot be the full equation. And it takes certain people who get it and who have the confidence to look outside the box to
Got it.
execute. But the one thing in fashion that is actually hard facts is history.
Yeah.
You can't rewrite history, obviously.
Absolutely.
You can flow with it, you can learn from it, you can regurgitate it, but
And it
that's
repeats
definitely,
itself too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's definitely concrete, you know.
Yeah.
So there was no historical lineage to glasses, and a big thing about business, whether it's on the internet or anywhere else, is when you have a product-based business, you want to figure out what your exit point is.
Yeah.
So what is, God forbid, you have $100,000 worth of product at the end, and you can't clear the product. What's the exit? And because if not, your profit's all in whatever your
Yeah,
commodity
yeah.
is. So another interest in this as a commodity is eyewear is medical.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a need for it.
Wow.
So whether it's not fashion, it could be medical, and there's
Yeah.
always ways to liquidate commodity away from a fashion
Absolutely.
perspective.
Yeah.
So that was like a big thing with eyewear.
Got it. So you're kind of. It sounds like you were in this situation where, which I would love for the audience that's tuning in, especially since, like I said, the majority of them are millennials and
Mhm.
younger entrepreneurs. Would you agree that it's totally fine when you're starting off to just experiment, right? I mean, it sounded like the first half of this whole game that you've been playing, that you've been on this thing called Earth, you were just really experimenting, kind of being aware of your surroundings and what you can make happen from what you are already in, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, experience is 100% of the game,
Mhm.
right? Education is the platform of confidence, but other than that, without the experience, education only stands true
Mhm.
in certain industries.
is that why you were saying, like, when you were interviewed, where you were getting interviewed when you were in college, or right when that
Yeah.
business took off there,
Yeah.
and you were saying that college really wasn't, it was because you kind of realized that, hey, this is where I'm actually learning, what I'm doing, not when I'm sitting in a classroom?
Well, I would backstep and say that I do believe that college is incredibly
Okay,
important.
got it.
In fashion,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're trying to learn a specific discipline,
Mm-hmm.
like designing, and you want to do CADs or pattern making or something that's actually educational based,
Yeah.
that someone can teach you, everything else in fashion is whether you're that person or not.
Got it.
And in fashion marketing, even more.
Yeah.
So my problem was with the school, not with school in general.
Got it. Okay.
Because the school, like, my friends were banging the teachers, and to me that was insane.
Yeah.
Like coming from a high school to
Yeah.
a college where,
Anything
we're
goes.
like, beyond anything
Yeah,
goes.
yeah.
We're in class, watching this girl's lesson, and he's putting like archaic first laptop versions of iMovies of her asshole spread. And, like, how can you like really take her seriously?
Yeah.
And this school was compiled of a bunch of professionals where the profession had surpassed them in the industry. So they
Oh.
were failed professionals and definitely had a certain amount of things to tell us about it,
Yeah.
but they were not at the forefront of it. In the fashion
Got it.
industry, unfortunately, in Montreal, where I'm from, the motto was kind of like they who can't teach.
They who can't teach.
And there's nothing wrong with that, and I get
Yeah.
the idea of, you know, having a job and that, but at an industry that's changing, and as technology comes into play,
Yeah.
and where you really have to, you know, be with the wave, you know, or creating it,
Yeah.
not watching it crash and then going, okay, fuck, how do I get into
I
that
missed
pool?
on that one too. Yeah.
That whole particular school became archaic, and I take on students from there now as internships, and
Yeah.
one of them just walked in the room, and her education isn't what got her the job. Her will to adapt and to learn
Got it.
is what got her the job.
Got it.
And I think that if you would ask her, not a single thing she learned in that program that she went through the whole program is she able to apply to her current life, whether it's with my company or anyone else's.
Yeah. So when you noticed that, did you kind of take the matter into your own hands and say, hey, well, these people right here that are trying to teach me what I want to learn are clearly outdated, like you said. So did you start looking beyond and find somebody, maybe like a mentor or somebody that you looked up to and kind of, you know, read after, or maybe you had been your whole life?
That's a good question. What did I do? So the way that this fashion school worked is after your third year, you had a final project where you had to create a fictional entity, and you had to present this entity in front of these current pillars in the fashion industry, and they would judge you on what they thought, kind of like
Wow.
a Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
Except I made an entity year one, and it was in stores, and it was making money, so I couldn't compete because it worked. You know,
Wait,
so
what company was this, if you mind me asking?
it was, my first brand was called Urban Freakout, and it was this brand that was a platform at the time for artists. So it was giving a platform for graffiti artists to interpret my ideology and my name, and the name was UF, and it was with a backwards F, and the whole idea of it was that the brand became very popular over these trucker hats that we did before Von Dutch and everything came. And either you bought the designs that these artists did, which had a lot of visual depth to them and was really supporting this type of a community, or you bought the logo, which was our Urban Freakout, which was meant to be a bad name, and it was a U with a backwards F, so when you would look in the mirror, the hat would then say F you.
Wow.
So you were like, so it was like,
cool.
okay, you know, like you're a bit of a jerk off, you bought the fuck you hat because you don't understand the company, and you don't understand that there's a supportive platform that we're trying to give back to artists. You know,
Wow.
and the first guy who made our logo is actually rather humble and relevant currently. He owned a brand at the time called Evidence, and then he many years later transitioned into a guy named Jound, and he has the Jound brand, and he's heavily involved in the you know, Kanye West creative team, and he made Ben Trill, and you know, he's in that
Ben
whole,
Trill was huge.
yeah, he's in
one.
that whole community of people. So there was a bunch of people that were involved like that, and you know, we all went separate ways, and that was kind of the idea. But the school wouldn't let me compete because it wasn't fair, right? I could show up with my current, you know, stock lists, with a catalog, with the celebrity, you know, pictures, and just throw the thing at them and be like, okay, cool, well, you know, I gotta go for dinner, just tell me when to come and get the award. You know, so that was kind of like the schooling portion of it.
Got it.
And there was also no technological advances in the school at the time, using internet, so like iMovie for presentations, when you would bring in an iMovie and do like,
They roll in the TV in the car.
I mean, well, I had my own setup, but they just weren't getting it. You know?
Yeah. Perfect, man. Perfect. So I think there's you know, definitely people are tuning in. By the way, listening on any podcast platform, whether it be iTunes or whatever it is, make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys leave a 5-star review, your biggest takeaway as well, of course. And also be sure to give Corey, Mr. Vintage Frames. I don't know exactly which you prefer to go by, Corey or...
I go by it all, bro.
We go by it all. All right. So
Go by
give
it
him
all.
a follow at Vintage Frames. That's your personal one,
Yeah.
right? Perfect.
Kind of acts as the company one as well, but
Yeah.
it's apparently one and the same.
Exactly. That's very, very interesting within itself, because that's not a mistake, right? You didn't do that by, you know, just for whatever reason. I'm sure you had a plan behind that, and that's something that I want to touch on is obviously branding. That's something that you know, just from these couple of stories and projects you've been you worked on throughout your life, like all have been brands. And really, like, creating a brand is definitely not the easiest thing, right? It's not like something that you know anybody can do. It's a formula. Would you agree that it's a formula and less of a guessing work?
I think it depends how honest you want to be with yourself, you know, and what you're trying to do. It's not really a formula if you are the lifestyle. Personally. If you're creating it for someone else, so you know, which we do as well, yes, it's a little bit more of a formula. In the Vintage Frames brand, it was more of a guideline, you know, to show failures and successes to the community of people that support you with equal importance. So be equally as proud that you failed, and equally as proud that you succeeded. And if you were able to show if you were able to show a pure form of what the real life was behind the frames, you could never really be called on any faults because you were already showing people your faults. And the, you know, the brand name became the aggression behind the frame.
Yeah, exactly. And very vintage style type of.
Yeah, and is that a formula? Not really, because every day is a different day. There's a different adversity. There's a different success. There's different ups. There's different downs. So, you know, for us, the formula is kind of honesty and like let it go how it goes. Like people, we really believe that people either really like us or really hate us. You know, and the people that are kind of middle ground, we don't really want them in general because they're unsure with their own life. You know. Yeah,
that's a very good point. I think when it comes to, I think that's something, and I'm the least political person you'll ever meet in your life, but Donald Trump, he's somebody who does that really well. He separates the crowd into two, people that love him and the people that hate him, because he understands that, hey, I can't get everybody to love me anyway, so I'm not even gonna play that game. And when it comes to building a brand or just, you know, launching a company, you gotta be very picky with who you want, and you have to be able to accept the fact that, hey, I can't please everybody. I can't possibly make a pair of glasses that everybody and their mom is gonna love. You kind of chose your audience, and you know, you went head first. And I feel like, honestly, I mean, I don't really see much competition in terms of like the price point that you went after and the style and.
Right. So we have very different price points.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about the $99.
Yeah, exactly. That's the.
So the $99 one was large companies looking at us going, you know, we're interested in buying you. You do no advertising. You have a very high price point. You have no line for marketing in your P&L. We don't understand how that's scalable. And so for us, instead of having a brand that was not inclusive of everyone, I don't really believe that brands should segment people. I think that it should bring people together. Yes, different brands are for different people. Yeah. But as Vintage Frames started as purveyors, so we're purveyors of original designer vintage goods. So nothing was actually our brand.
Got it.
It was all, you know, vintage Dior and vintage Cartier and you know, whatever vintage brands you would bring into the mix. But the idea of the VF was, let's produce glasses at a higher quality than everyone, with a smaller margin than anyone, and not make any money on it. Let's just break even on it, but let's replace that as the line for marketing in the P&L.
Wow.
So let's, instead of telling people what we are and you know what we can do and you know kind of tooting our own horn, let's make products that have no margin, that are accessible for everyone, and let's let everyone be a part of the brand and advertise it for us.
Wow.
You know, so, and that was kind of the reverse scenario of the Vintage Frames brand, because, you know, at one point everyone thought just because we did, you know, $50,000 glasses and $100,000 glasses and stuff like that, that it was not inclusive, and that was that was the problem.
It's funny because when I was in high school, I remember you guys would like flex these frames, and I would look them up, and I'll feel like, dude, what, 15 G's, like 10 G? I'm like, I can't afford this.
Right.
So what I would do is I would go on eBay and look for something that was like my price point would still kind of fit that style, you know. And so it's interesting too how, you just said, like, you got these companies, what they were probably thinking and trying to advise you on is, hey, just go slap a billboard, down the street, go print out some flyers or something like that. But what you did is you said, hey, I'm just gonna make my front end, I'm gonna break even on my front end through actual products and acquire real customers that do business with us to hopefully not only create like, recurring customers, but also have him just be this, because when everybody has the cutest baby in the world, right? Like this guy, Dan Fleischman, the youngest person to take a company public when he was like 23. And I would love to introduce you to him. I think you guys would make a great connection. But, he says everybody has the cutest baby in the world, right? Like every single entrepreneur has the best product in their own opinion. But what you essentially were able to do with that play right there is have this whole audience here that you catered to and took into consideration and made them part of your family and your brand, to just say, hey, they have the cutest baby in the world, right? They got the best glasses in the world, they're super cool, they got XYZ. And so that word of mouth advertising is definitely where I think I know for a fact that's where you grew the brand to be as solid as it is without, and before we hit this record button, we were talking about Facebook pixels, and I asked you, I'm like, what kind of marketing you were doing? You were like, honestly,
we don't do any of that.
yeah, I don't do any of that.
Nothing.
Yeah,
we don't even I mean, I can't say that we won't do it one day. We had a really aggressive build on this new website platform that we're very, very proud of. That was financially was, to me, something that was insane to put towards the web. But my cousin being the COO of Shopify,
he's a COO.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Harley.
That's amazing.
Tells me how cheap I am. It's not really, you could go bigger, but I'm very, very satisfied with it, and we might one day. But the reality is, we have a very different way of doing it. And we have a very different way of doing it. We have a company that is very disruptive to the optical industry, because we're honest about it. We're honest about the ins and the outs. We're not trying to hide to people, what if we make something that's the best quality, it's the best quality. If we make something that's the worst quality, well, it's the worst quality. And sometimes there's reasons for that too.
Like that one right there, for example, right? The $99 price point.
So the $99 price point, basically what we did is we took over old machines, like from companies like Cartier and Hilton and stuff like that. And these old machines that we produce it with, we're using kind of an archaic production ideology.
Got it.
But we're producing better quality glasses than Cartier.
Wow.
Not if you get into their buffalo horns and stuff like that. But you take a Cartier glass, an aviator like ours has spring hinges, theirs doesn't, which is kind of an archaic ideology. That would be one. Theirs would be a 14 karat plating, ours are 24, and they're dipped, and it's a different type of process. Our lenses are far better than anybody's.
I mean, that's personally what catches my eye all the time.
There's no question about it, and it's because we use a very different technique to it. But the difference between me and Cartier is that I don't have to pay anyone any royalty fees. I don't have to outsource production. I don't have to pay all these different things that the end consumer is just paying for, really. So I'd rather make $5 on a $100 frame, which to a lot of people seems like it's a waste of time, but then compare my advertising line to Cartier's. Obviously Cartier is quite a bigger brand than I am. But if you would scale it down and compare our numbers and compare our sizes at the current format, you'd see that we're really far advanced.
Gotcha.
And that's what we're kind of building and doing and fucking around with,
Incredible. How big is the Vintage Frames team? Like how many employees you have?
I think we're 11.
11.
Yeah, we're 11. We have no walls in our office.
No what? No walls?
No walls. I
No
mean,
wall?
I work from a tree house, but
I'd love to see that one. It's a tree house?
yeah, it's a tree house. It's a tree house with a ramp to get up to it. And we have a very different concept. And, we work through things together. So we have a no pass the buck policy.
Yeah.
Our positions are
No pass.
pass the buck. So it's like, if let's say we get a rush of packages and you're doing the accounting, well, you're stopping doing the accounting and you're packing boxes, because that's what we have to do. So
That's the money making the customer.
Yeah, so we're exactly. And for instance, when we do Black Friday and we have this massive surge of purchases and carried into Cyber Monday with 24 drops in 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's thousands of packages, and that I'm even in there packaging it. So
Yeah.
we're all pretty hands-on. And we grow the company slowly internally than other companies.
Got it.
And we like to try to empower within and stuff like that. And only when we really feel that we have not been able to pull a new resource from within, that's when we'll start to expand the team.
Beautiful.
So we really believe in empowering the individuals that are within the company, whether they started as shipping or cutting lenses or whatever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, before you built a team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were obviously at one point a one-man team, right? Like a one-man gang. Just you're doing the accounting, you're doing the advertising, you're doing the reaching out to influencers, whatever it is. So what was it like at that point in time? Because that is really, I think, what a lot of people that I personally want to kind of expose, right? Because every single great entrepreneur and where they're at now, at one point they were that lonely kid, right, where nobody really believed in their ideas or their visions, and they're just kind of in their room with them and their thoughts and again and their ideas. So but how were you able to kind of stop thinking and stop kind of doubting yourself and really just became a boss, like somebody who puts things on the line, who risks money that might or might not even have, and all for the sake of making a bet, taking a risk on yourself or themselves?
For me personally, it's that I believe that even failure is a success. And that's just what I'm comfortable with internally. And a lot of the struggles of the entrepreneur is what they think of themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm any better or any worse than anyone else.
Yeah.
That was kind of what drove it. I never gave a shit what anyone else said.
Yeah.
Because my happiness was always the value.
Was that something that was present, like in your family, like kind of everybody had this like expressive attitude? Like, was it an environment that you grew up in that allowed you to be kind of carefree? And
not really. The influence were a big influence was going with my grandfather to this deli every morning, because at the time they told me I was an early riser. Maybe I just had incredible anxiety, and that's why I was always up. But I would go to this deli, and I would go there from I guess being born and up until maybe 14, 15, and the same guys. The conversations went from there was a major roller coaster in the clothing business at the time. So all these garmentos, as they would call themselves, which had made money quickly and in an industry that was new and growing, and were all at the top of their game, and you would hope that they stashed money. But as you saw, and as the ages went through, and as technology came into play, and just many different factors, recessions and shit like that, there was decline with them, right? And the decline with them was in their happiness, in the way that they comported themselves, in the way that they took care of themselves, and in merchandise that they had, right? And so an interesting thing was, well, you have all these guys who have all this merchandise that they don't know what to do with. Maybe I can do something with it, So that was one ideology that was on one side, and then my mother had a very self-made, driven attitude. She had a couple of jobs to support what I was doing, and she was there was no set times in the day, which was an interesting thing. And my dad was very accepting of anything that I would do. And yeah, he wasn't, so he used to tell me the same thing that I tell my son, which is, doesn't matter what you're going to do in life, but even if you're the guy that's scrubbing the toilets at McDonald's, make sure it's what makes you happy, and make sure that you're the best at scrubbing those toilets. Doesn't matter what the fuck you want to do.
Yeah.
So it was kind of those three things that were embedded into me in like almost a schizophrenic type of way.
Yeah.
Because they're three very different, ideologies. And the one common denominator was the happiness factor. Because if you're not happy doing what you're doing, you're never going to do it well.
Yeah.
You're never going to be satisfied, and you're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
So if you could find happiness in the struggle, and happiness in the failures, and in the adversity, versus being scared to go head on with adversity, I think that's was the most important thing in all of this.
Incredible, man, incredible. I would totally agree in terms of your parents, and I don't want to hold you up for too long here, so we'll definitely wrap it up.
Don't worry about it. If you're here because we want you.
Beautiful,
not
man.
because you're holding a gun to our head.
Beautiful. So really, I mean, when it comes to like parents and stuff, I mean, I get tons of direct messages from just kids my age and maybe a little bit older, younger, just talking about how the fact that they can or cannot make moves all has something to do with their parents, the environment that they grew up in, and so
that's just an excuse.
I would say it's both an excuse, but it definitely has some subconscious to it. Like the fact that your father was supportive of you. What if you grew up in an environment where your father was like, "You're an idiot. You're never gonna be anything," and he's the person that is obviously your superhero, right?
No.
You think you would have came out strong on the other end?
Yeah, no, I because if I wasn't as strong of a person telling me that whatever it was that I wanted to do would be okay with him, there's a lack of guidance there. So that was a 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
It might have been better for me to be told, no, you can't do this. And
To go against it.
Yeah, so
Got it.
So no, I don't believe that was, that was a chance that he took in trying to figure out what my personality is. So no, I don't think the parents play into it, really. I think that people who use their parents as an excuse for either their success or their failure failed. They should look at themselves as a failure, because I don't believe that anybody has any real power over what you do as a person.
Got it. So it starts for you, because every single time we record one of these podcasts, I like to kind of throw that in there to see, it's all different. At the end of the day, it's all different opinions, different takes on it. So by the sound of it, sounds like for you, it starts and ends all with you, right? Like you're fully responsible for where you're at or where you are not at this point in time.
Yes. Well, I have a team. But am I fully responsible for the things and the line items that I needed to contribute to that team? Yes. Is the team where they're at because of me? Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm not a one-man show.
Yeah.
I do a lot more than most other CEOs do. I'm a lot more hands-on. But some people look at that as the wrong way to do things also. So everyone has different skills, and everybody has different things that they're comfortable doing. A lot of people build businesses to support their lifestyle, and then people build businesses that are businesses that will live on without them and that can be sold and stuff like that.
Say that one more time. You said some people build a business to support their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like as in good habits or bad habits, right?
No, so I have some friends that have businesses that are very successful. It would be very hard to remove them from the business.
Yeah.
And their success is based on a marker of what will it cost them to live, and what will it cost them to cover their nut.
Gotcha.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. That's just one thing. Then there's people who build businesses who want to build a business that can be sold, that's its own entity on its own, that can outlive them and shit like that. Two different, no right or wrong, just two different comfort zones, really.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and end results.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to build a business that will outlive me.
Yeah.
You know, still, ironically, while having my face on it.
Yeah, so that's a really good. That's really interesting. I'm glad that you brought that up because I was talking to Jimmy, the shooter behind the camera in the podcast. I was telling him, I was like, because I was reading this book. It's called Built to Sell. I forget the exact name of the author. I can send it over, but it's talking about different variables that if you have in your business that can help you sell it quicker, right? So if you have, you know, people on a recurring monthly membership, like let's say AT&T or T-Mobile, it's pretty easy to approach, you know, investors and be like, hey, look, we got 1,000 or 1,000,000 people paying us $50, $70 a month, right? So at least more attractive. And one of those things is whether you have your face attached to it or not, right? Although it's kind of like a cartoon drawing of you, it looks like a Medusa head. We can throw it up probably on the logo or the picture of the podcast, the thumbnail of the podcast. But you know, having your name or your face attached to it, does that worry you at all? Has that been brought up in conversation? Because it sounds like you are trying to get these pieces online to be able to sell it.
It's an interesting conversation because there's many things with it that are very good.
Yeah.
There's many things that aren't.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's a sellable logo,
Yeah.
right? But I'm so heavily attached to the company in every aspect. You know, I do all the designs, all the purveying.
Yeah. They're gonna have to buy you with it. It sounds like.
Yeah, or at least buy my interest to put in the time and effort to train someone
Yeah.
to see the same way that I do,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, is in many colors and sometimes in black and white. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure what the answer is, to be honest.
Gotcha.
That's kind of rolling with the punches.
Yeah.
know?
Would you be fine with either or? Like if it came time to it and they were like, you know, I guess that's a bad question to ask, but like if you could or couldn't have sold it or sell it in the near future, would you be fine?
Like, would I be pissed
either
if
or?
my face wasn't there?
Not if your face wasn't there, but like if, let's just say, for whatever reason, actually we shouldn't even get into that. I mean, Movado sold, you know, their watches or their watch brand for, Movement sold to Movado for, was it like $1 billion plus, a couple $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally started like drop shipping these watches from like China and just put their name, you know,
But not their face.
but not their face. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Is like, does that worry you, or is that totally fine with
So
you?
we actually have 3 logos. That's
Got it.
That's one of the logos, but that logo is more the stamp of approval.
Okay.
Less the branded logo.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a curious conversation between different major optical players on, you know, if we're interested in buying it, how long do we have to keep him around to do that? And so we have many different divisions of the company which are able to be kind of split up if we needed to sell it or if we wanted to sell it and we needed to kind of conform to the buyer.
Yeah.
But you know, definitely a lot of pros and cons for having my face on one of the logos. I think it's comedy. You know, I just built this house where I put that logo in mosaic tiles in the powder room because I thought it would be funny that, you know, maybe some of my friends would, you know,
Come see this.
well they definitely all see it, and I'm watching you while you piss. But I just thought it was like a funny thing to do. For me it's more the comedy. You know, my dad used to make fun of me when I would wear someone else's name, a brand name on, you know, my shirt because he was never really big into that.
Mm-hmm.
And goes, well, why the fuck are you advertising for someone else? And you know, there's a certain validity to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that definitely speaks volume. It's like, why not just rep your own stuff?
Yeah. I mean, or like, you know, when I was young, well, your name's not Hilfiger, you know, or your name's not, you know, I guess Polo, but Polo I didn't really wear, so I can't honestly say that. But let's say Hilfiger I was pretty big into. So it's kind of like that like evolved funny ideology, you know.
God. So you put your character into it. You put your personality into your brand as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way of keeping my personality out of anything that I do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very eccentric, but I'm honestly eccentric. I'm not eccentric for the fact about, you know, or for being eccentric. I happen to be that kind of a weird dude.
Yeah.
You know, I've just been able to add my wit into it, and education and intelligence to turn it into something that makes me happy, that I like doing every day, and that can provide for my family.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, vintage frames is a result of taking the things that I hate in life and making sure that they're not included, and you know, and doing things that I fought against for years. You know, I grew up in a community. I grew up with two very different sets of friends. Either they were very rich, or they were very poor.
Yeah.
And very poor, sometimes being so poor that they couldn't afford a pen and a paper to write poor.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my wealthy friends were going to inherit businesses, and I only know one of them who inherited a business who's actually successful with it. The rest of them were lazy or entitled, or
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not saying that behind their back. I'll look at them all at dinner and tell them to their face.
Yeah.
Also, so to me that was like, unacceptable in life. So when we took that and we married it with the fact that my other friends who were very poor were working together to do better, to get better,
Yeah.
to make something, to be, you know, to have something where they could look at someone in the eyes and say, I'm so and so, this is what I do, and nice
Yeah.
to meet you. And that's kind of how we brought up vintage frames, you know.
That is incredible. I think anybody that's you know, listening right now, they're really gonna be able to accept the fact, especially as they hear it more after every single, or in every single segment with whoever we're interviewing, hearing the fact that, hey, I came from nothing, and
well, I didn't come from nothing, but I didn't come from anything that
Gotcha.
was
Okay.
that was not without struggle. You know,
Okay.
so we definitely would never have to worry about food on the table or
Yeah.
anything like that. But the things that I wanted to do, extracurricular activities, you know, having toys, you
Yeah.
know, whether they're children's toys or now bigger toys that I
Yeah.
play with, or anything that was on the luxury or stuff that was other than necessity. That's where I came from. So like, I definitely don't want to paint the picture that, you know,
Gotcha,
I was
gotcha.
in
Oh, I'm happy
in
you
a
clarified.
cardboard box somewhere,
Gotcha.
because I was not.
Gotcha,
You know, but
gotcha.
no one in my family owned property. You know, everyone rented. So that when
Yeah.
I bought my first place, and you know, now I have a rather diverse and healthy real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
That was like, I was in tears. That was the biggest fucking thing,
Yeah.
you know, on the planet for me.
So you pretty much just realized at a young age that, hey, look, like, we're good. We got money coming in. We're not really like stressed out over it. But if I want to get the things that I want without having to rely on my parents or whatever it is, I gotta get to work.
I got to figure it out. And like, the way Canada works is everything that you do up until 18 gets erased. So other than killing someone, you could get caught selling drugs. You could
Yeah.
do prostitution if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
You could do whatever the fuck you want to do that might be considered shady in any culture.
Mhm.
And at 18, it's like, whew, new guy.
Yeah.
So let's fuck. So you know, my
He took that
motto
into
was like-
consideration.
was like, look, if we're gonna fuck up, let's fuck up now. Let's figure it out, and let's do it before we're 18.
Yeah.
You know, and then let's go from there. You know, and
Beautiful.
kind of make it happen. So that, with the need to have some type of a stability, and then the fact that I have two children that
Mhm.
that I'm not quite sure are as strong as I might have been.
Gotcha.
And I don't want to put them in the position where they have to struggle, but I also don't want to put them in the position where they don't have to struggle.
Gotcha.
And so I tell my son every day when I'm fucking around with him that, you know, he's like, well, Dad, you're rich. And I said, well, A, I'm not rich, and I have money, and
You don't.
you have nothing. You have
Yeah.
fuck all. Whatever you got in your pockets, that's,
It's mine.
well, no, whatever you in your pockets is yours, but whatever's in my pocket's mine.
Yeah.
You know, and I also tell him every day that he will never inherit vintage frames. It's not even an option for him. Not interested in any way, shape, or form. If you prove yourself and you want to use vintage frames to create a subdivision or a platform, great. If not, sell it.
Yeah.
you never have this
Yeah.
to fall back on.
And there's multiple scenarios or cases where you got like Bill Gates, you got Warren Buffett, who make that very public, like they're not getting a dollar.
Right.
And people look at them as if they're crazy, but they understand like, hey, the reason why I am where I'm at today is because I was at a certain point where I couldn't, where I had to make it work. And so where I didn't have all the abundance in terms of, food or all the things that I want. So he had to get to work. Warren Buffett had to get to work. Bill Gates did as well. So therefore your son and, me and Jimmy got to get to work, just like you have been for, the past however many years you've been in the game. So honestly, I mean, we covered everything from really, the company, the brand that you're taking up. I would say, is it 100% your focus? Are you also working on some extracurricular brands, or is this like your one thing right now?
I consult for a lot of brands.
Got it.
I work very closely with I think one of the most premium alcohol brands in the world, Remy Martin. I work with a brand called Lugs and British Knights and many other brands. I have a barbershop, I have real estate companies and other things. And Vintage Frames is my main company, but it also is the catalyst for the other companies. So for me, I'd rather take out as much money from Vintage Frames as I can to purchase a real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
That becomes, tangible assets that have real growth and that aren't, as liquid as, having a pocket full of money.
Yeah.
So
like one is a cash flow.
Yeah.
Other ones are just investments.
Investments and stuff like that. And, everything we do is kind of backwards.
Yeah.
I only invest in one neighborhood. In the neighborhood, I own a lot of the businesses, and I can control the property.
Is he trying to monopolize it?
I mean, that's it,
I feel like that whole neighborhood is gonna have one marble type of
soon.
Like marble stone, just his logo on it.
Yeah.
That'll be legendary.
At least a parade day. Hey, Julia.
Honestly, I mean, I feel like we've covered, more than enough. The people that are tuning in, they definitely learned the power of, appreciating your background, the fact that you can make something out of where you came from. And it doesn't really have to be, I think what's so beautiful about Vintage Frames and you is that it's not like you and then your business, right? Which is what the majority of situations that most people set up for themselves is like. Kind of like for me, I'm so happy I can kind of be myself, dress however I want, and interview the people that I want to talk to and want to learn from, and not have to really be anybody that I'm not, you know what I mean? So I really do understand that. And I've seen scenarios where, and I've been in scenarios where it's like me, my business, and it's like two different worlds, and it just does not mix well. It's not organic. So therefore, that's definitely one takeaway that I want everybody to get away from it as well. And the idea that it's totally cool, to experiment, to, to fail forward, to be able to get to the point where, you find your winner. Mm-hmm. Would you agree, just to kind of wrap it up, that all the failures in your life, like before you got that one major winner, that big bag, like it made it all worth it?
I don't think I would be where I am without the failures. But I'm also driven by failure.
Yeah.
I'm not
scared of it.
I'm not scared of it at all.
That's
I fail and roll.
Yeah.
And some people don't. So, I don't think that it's fair to tell everyone that, fail and that's the way, because just because I'm able to get up. A lot of people aren't able to get up.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put them in the position where someone listens to this and goes, well, fuck it, I'm going to go out and fail, and they fail and they're like, their whole life is fucked up because they're just not the guy or the girl that's going to get back up and be like, okay, cool, what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had an ex, she was trying to do like a little bit of similar e-commerce space, and it's like, as soon as things don't go wrong, she gets super anxious, like starts bugging out, and it's like, hey, you might be better off being a partner or working for an e-commerce company, because clearly within entrepreneurship there's those ups and downs, right? And it's like those ups and downs after you've been in it for such a long time, I still get a little bit of anxiety, obviously, like from those ups and downs, where it's like 1 month you do X amount, next month it's like, why do we why doesn't it just keep going up and up like a linear line? But I feel like after a certain point all those ups and downs kind of become from a distance, like a straight up, curve, kind of like Warren Buffett's. I mean, his is like It's like super small, and then it's just like 10x's over like a span of like 2, 3, 4 years. So Corey, man, thank you so much
you, man.
for being on here.
Anytime, man. Good luck with it.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much, man. Hopefully we can catch you when after you sell this. How about that? After you sell
the
this
company?
vintage frames.
Oh, so you're not here to buy
Well,
it?
how much? What would be a dollar
You told
amount?
me that you were here to buy the fucking company.
I am. Jimmy, get the check, bro. Where's the check?
We don't take checks.
Dude, what
Worldwide.
would be the dollar sign you'll put on it? If somebody walked in right now with blank checks that put your number on it, anything fair?
I don't have a number.
You don't have a number?
No.
Everybody got a number, man.
I like to leave it to people's
Yeah, I was gonna say you got a number in your head right now.
Depends if they like Ninja Turtles or G.I. Joe.
There you go. We'll never know. All right, thank you guys so much for hopping on. Make sure you leave thumbs up depending on why you're watching this or listening to this. Actually, we couldn't get the chance to. There's tons of boxes in here. I mean, having like a convention out here in Vegas, right?
I think there's always conventions. in
There's
Vegas,
always
but
convention
Not
in
when
Vegas.
we're at. We just like to travel this amount of boxes. It's really safety blankets.
All right, so that's that.
And a lot of condoms.
But other than that, hopefully we can get him on video next time and show you guys the drip that this guy got going on. But you can always follow him on Instagram at Vintage Frames.
Yes.
Website is going to be
VintageFrames.com.
Beautiful, and it's a Shopify store. All right, you guys know how huge we are into the Shopify platform.
Shout out to Shopify.
Shout out to Shopify, guys. All right, let's end it off there. Take care.